So I guess I'll start off. So I mean, I'm sure a lot of people here are Hive developers. So you guys are probably all used to working in the master branch. To be honest, I never look in the master branch. I don't know what happens in the master branch. So as an end user of Hive, we're using a certain version of Hive to do something. And that'll typically be the latest version of Hive 2.3, or it'll be the latest version of Hive 3.1, right? And what'll happen is we'll find a bug, for example, and we want to fix it. So we then need to, figure out in Git which is the right branch, check it out, which is fine. You can clone it from GitHub, and then look in the wiki to find the developer instructions. And it's not all massively up to date, but generally you can kind of figure out what you need to do. So then usually the first thing I run into, the first problem I run into is I clone Hive into like my user directory, which is a few folders in. And then I try just run, like Maven package. And it fails compiling because there's some like really long path in one of the file names, and it's longer than the maximum file path length on Linux. So then I have to move Hive up a few directories so that it's in a shorter path. So that's a bit weird, but okay, I can do that, and I can symlink to it. I then try import it into Eclipse, and that usually doesn't go very well. Eclipse just goes absolutely crazy, sometimes crashes. But I've managed to get it where at least I can have one of the submodules open and I can start developing on it. Not the entire project with all the modules. I can have one open. So that goes okay. And then, then I try to run the unit tests. And again, for a module, it might work. But if I try to do it on the top level, then I typically get failures in completely different modules. And I run it again and again, and sometimes different tests will fail every time. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that's got nothing to do with my changes because it's in a completely different module. So then I go back to the instructions and okay, I raise a Jira ticket, fine. And then I have to create the patch file. So I've been doing software development long enough that that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. So I create the patch file, follow the naming convention for the patch files, attach it to the Jira, and then the automation kicks off, and then a different set of unit tests usually fail. And then at that point, I usually ask very nicely for one of the Hive devs to take a look. And they'll review it, and they'll look at the test results. They'll usually kick the build off 2 or 3 more times. Different tests may or may not fail along the way. But eventually one of them will be like, no, this is okay. It's kind of to be expected, and they'll merge my changes in. And then we got into the next bit, which is waiting for a release. So that's the bit also like the sort of speed and velocity of the releases and how all of that works on the 2 and on the 3 is not massively fast. So that often takes a bit of begging on the mailing lists, like, please, can we have a release? And then there's a lot of discussion. And then I know because I helped when Alan Gates was still around, I helped do a release just after he'd left Cloudera. And he didn't, apparently there's a whole bunch of tests that need to be run, like big integration tests that need to be run. So I helped run those. So I spun up, using Expedia's Amazon account, I spun up some EMR instances, well, actually just EC2 instances, and ran all of those tests a number of times. I think those take many hours to run. And again, a few of those failed. And again, I had to run them a few times. And again, eventually Alan was like, that's okay. It's nothing to do with what's the problem here. And then he went and did the magic to do a release. So that's kind of been my experience. And I think it took a lot of perseverance. This entire process takes weeks. And I think that's quite off-putting for like new developers if they want to get something into the project quickly. So I'm just like, that's my experience. I don't know what other people think, if they've had a better experience, if I've just been unlucky. And I'm going to turn my light on so you can actually see me.
Yeah. So I think we went a bit, or at least they became less hostile in this aspect recently. So I think with the GitHub pull requests, you shouldn't see that many failing tests all the time. But we really miss a more frequent release schedule, and yeah, I'm not even sure that we would want to do another 2.x release or even 3.x. So we are so far away from branch 3 right now with the master branch that yeah. So okay, making the project more welcoming to contributors. Uh, uh, I think we are making progress there, but we also need to make progress on the release side as well. I could think of what could possibly have a bit, or at least would be useful, is to run an IT service to have at least Hive 4 uh, pre-builds to be able to use by users.
I agree. I think there are two separate issues here. So one is, as a new contributor, like making it easier to make contributions. So that's like getting it easy to compile, to build in your IDE, to submit a pull request, and to have all the tests pass. So I think that's one thing. The versioning, so just my thoughts on that one. So there hasn't been a Hive 4 release. So all the great work you guys have been doing in master, like no one can use it, right? So you really need to do a Hive 4 release at some point. I appreciate your reluctance on wanting to do any more Hive 2.x releases. The reality is, because moving from Hive 2 to 3 is quite a big step, there are a lot of companies out there that are using Hive 2 and are finding it very hard to move to Hive 3. So then if we look at Hive 3, so I think that is now, slowly being adopted more. Like Spark 3 has moved. So Spark 2 used to support Hive 1 and 2. Spark 3 is now supporting Hive 2 and 3. So I think Hive 3 is slowly spreading, but it's still, I think Hive 2 is still more widely used. The interesting thing, if you don't plan to do any more Hive 3 releases, that's going to be quite tricky, because I think a lot of people are on Hive 3, and I don't know what the path is from Hive 3 to 4. If that's an easy backwards compatible change, I would think not, because there's a major version change there. And then you've got to think of all the platforms which bundle Hive, right? So you've got EMR 6, so Amazon's Hadoop distribution. So that's using Hive 3. You have like Qbol and all of these other vendors. So the latest versions of their platforms are using Hive 3. And I think if you make a version of Hive 4, which isn't backwards compatible, and they can't roll it into those ranges, they're all just going to stick on Hive 3 for a very long time, like they did with EMR 5 and Hive 2. So people who are not running Hive themselves, but are getting it indirectly via these other projects, it takes a lot longer for them to get the 4.0 version or the 3.0 version than you may appreciate.
I can't really mention anything problematic features which might be incompatible or problematic during a Hive 3 or 3 to 4 upgrade. So, does anyone have any comment about this? So.
Well, I think at least here I'm Diego. One of the things, whenever you want to build Hive or Spark, Spark has the hard-coded dependency of, I believe it is right now Hive 3. So if we move to, say, let's say Hive 4, and you want to still use Spark 3, you basically will need to rebuild it yourself in order to take it, to change the dependencies and build whatever it is going to be broken to still be able to use Spark. So that is probably, it's not a big issue, but it's going to be a little bit of work for some people, and for some people it's just going to not be possible because they are not building themselves Spark. They are just taking whatever it is in already published in the Spark community, or just using something from another vendor, so they are going to be attached to whatever the vendor is doing. So that is what I'm seeing, but I do agree with Adrian when about the versioning, because a couple of the patches that we saw in the past, they were flagged as Hive 4, but there's no Hive 4 per se, so you kind of need to look into exactly the branch that you are working for and then patch in there and then just build it. Like in our case, we just build it ourselves and then deploy it in the cluster. But there is no, like we see there are some patches that are applied to Hive 4, but Hive 4 doesn't exist exactly. So it's just look at the patches, then look in your code and say, okay, this is where I need to apply it, and then you build it yourself and keep working. So that's probably something that for sure could be improved, I believe.
I see. So, do I suspect correctly that Spark has Spark is being dependent on the Thrift interface? So, if we are able to backward, if we will be backward compatible by the Thrift interface, then it will be just okay. Or
I don't think so, because what Spark lets you do, you can actually use a different version of Hive than the one that Spark is built with. So it lets you can set like some properties, which are effectively like Spark, instead of getting your Hive libraries from your own class path, get the Hive libraries from a different, you can give it like a folder, and then you can dump a bunch of Hive libraries. I can't remember exactly which ones they are. You can put them there. And then when you start Spark up, it'll load them from there. So it's a little bit tricky, but you would have to figure out whatever calls, binary, Java calls Spark is making to Hive, are they binary compatible between 3 and 4, for example, in this case? And then if that's true, you'd be able to use Hive 4 with Spark 3. That would be okay. But if it's not true, then it becomes, you then have to go back to Spark and they have to update their versions. And that's obviously a much bigger discussion and a longer process.
yeah.
So that is a question either. Is the Thrift interface the same between 4 and 3? Because for a lot of our use cases, we use the Thrift interface. So if that's the same, we're probably okay for most of what we do. Not all, but most.
Mm-hmm. No, no. It's not the same, but I think it should be compatible, or at least that's the idea of Thrift to be able to extend the interface in a forward compatible manner. So, but not sure if it will work. So if Hive 3 client will work against the Hive 4 metastore, so or the GDBC driver is not is less of a problem, I guess. Okay. That could be tested or checked, so it's something that I can check. check out.
Will Hive 4, in a sense, need to be almost like a mini distribution, that it's going to be dependent on different other components like Hadoop 4 or other open source? I mean, will it almost be like a mini distribution? Or we can't just move Hive out and use the old dependencies, right? Some people have already said they have newer dependencies.
Yeah, it would definitely need Hive, Hadoop 3.1 or 2, I guess.
Okay.
And what would be the people's expectation about from Hive 4, or how about considering releasing the? So if we want to release a very big thing with Hive 4, we can rename Hive 4 to say Hive 3.5 or something like that. So. But is there any big goals for Hive 4? I think on the mailing list someone had mentioned to remove MapReduce or yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't want MapReduce removed. We have a few very heavy Hive jobs which use Hive SQL to process data. And we have had a few problems with TES. So we've generally found MapReduce to be more stable, if less performant. I think we might have resolved most of them. So I don't know, like as the developers, if it's a huge drain on you to keep the MapReduce side of things maintained, I could see why you would want to remove it. But as an end user, obviously that's like painful, because like now I have to go change all my scripts and I have to test everything again. And at some point people need to do that if you want to move forward, but it would be quite painful. So I mean, maybe that is something you guys want to do in 4, and you've marked it deprecated clearly. So I could understand why, but as an end user, I would feel the pain.
Okay, but it's not anymore tested that well. So you may find it more stable with Hive 2 for now, but we don't really run MapReduce tests anymore that much. So you will eventually run into bugs which are only exists in MapReduce.
We're using Hive 2, so yeah, it's probably less of an issue.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to see is support for using it on Java 11. So the strange thing is Hive 2 at the moment, you can use it on Java 9 and above, but Hive 3 you can't. So there was a patch that we contributed to the Hive 2 branch that was supposed to be merged into Hive 3. And either it wasn't, or there are some other issues in Hive 3, but you can't even compile the Hive 3 branch using Java 11, let alone use the binaries. So that would be just a nice feature request for a next version. It's just support for newer versions of Java.
But how do you run? How do you use Java 11? So is Hadoop ready for that?
So we have a lot of open source projects which use Hive. It depends on Hive, but it doesn't use the rest of Hadoop. And those projects, they might interact with the meta store, They might do data replication, and we'd like to run those on Java 11. And those, we can do it with Hive 2, but we can't. It's one of the things that's preventing us from moving to Hive 3, is we can't move those projects to Java 11 because Hive 3 doesn't work with Java 11, but Hive 2 does.
Interesting. I'm still confident it doesn't work work fully with Java 11. So I worked on making Hive Java 9 ready, and I had to hammer out a lot of issues. So even through it might not cause exceptions which are showstoppers. There might be problems in the background. So yeah, you should run the tests for that setup. So, but as you have said, it's not easy to run the tests.
I mean, for our use case, the Java 11 one, like that particular application has been massively tested, and we use it in production. So whatever code paths we're doing in Hive 2 on Java 11, we're fine. I appreciate them. We're not using Hive as an execution engine. It's all about the metadata. So there it's okay. I appreciate using it as an execution engine on Java 11. Maybe there are issues. We haven't tried that.
Okay.
So I mean, I've seen a few branches and pull requests that try upgrade to Java 9 and 11. I might have seen yours, and they try fix everything. I think just the first step would just be getting it to compile on Java 11, and then like that you could use it on Java 11, even if it might not be supported. And for those, it's just really, I've worked through them. Most of it's fairly simple. It's like, you know, getting rid of some of the stuff that's not, like adding dependencies for things that are no longer part of the JDK, but you can add a Maven dependency for them. There's like a class loader exception. That's a classic one. A lot of them are actually really easy to fix, at least just to get it usable as a library, if not as an execution engine.
Yeah, I think we would like the execution engine as well, because after all, that's the goal of the project, to execute queries. I don't know what's the current state of Java 11. I think probably David or Laszlo could.
Hey, this is David Molotov there. I'm actually calling in on my paternity leave here. I got my baby with me right here, so if she starts going off, I apologize. So yeah, I've been working on this problem for quite a while now, honestly. I think just about a year now I've been working on this. One of the problems that I've run into is that Hive has a crazy number of dependencies. They're all very much sort of hard linked into the project. And a lot of the dependencies themselves don't support the runtime anyway. Certainly, like there's a compilation piece, but on the other side, there's the runtime. And a lot of the dependencies don't support the runtime. So like Hadoop, for example, just the core Hadoop didn't support 11 until 3.2, I want to say. And I tried using that version, but it actually broke a few things that Hive is doing. So I've tried different versions and different iterations of Hadoop to compile against that, and they don't seem to want, like when I change, it's this kind of whack-a-mole. When I fix one thing, another problem crops up, and then I whack that mole and another one pops up. So the last whack-a-mole I had was, yeah, in Hadoop 3.1, I want to say, version support for for Java 11, but they changed something about an API that actually, I think it's LLAP uses for intercommunication between the various processes there, and that breaks at runtime. So I have an outstanding ticket to get that fixed. They said they would fix that in 3.11, whatever the next 3.3, excuse me. I think it's 3.3.1 or 3.3.2. Oh, there we go. And so they said they would fix it. So I'm kind of waiting on that release now. It's sort of the next step. And then one of the other issues, so we'll see if that resolves it. And then one of the other issues was, I think Druid. Druid is one of the components there now, one of the dependencies, and that is not really, that's got some really old dependencies of its own. So that was one of the other places that I was kind of struggling. I've opened like Jira's at all these dependencies and worked some of them. So I feel like it's getting close. It's just been a very long, like I said, game of whack-a-mole. But I do feel like the next big hurdle will be this. And I don't have, and I apologize, I'm calling in kind of ad hoc here. I don't have it in front of me, but oh, there we go. There's a Jira here that I'm trying to get into 3.3.1, I believe, for the Hadoop release. That my hope will be kind of, again, the next mole, and that will. I keep saying this is going to be the last one, but I'm hopeful that this is the last one. But yeah, so very much working on that. It's just on a lot, like there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of schedules. So work is continuing.
I feel your pain. Thank you.
Maybe you should create a branch to help moving to Java 11. So, or even building Hadoop for you or something like that. So I guess that's what would you really need, right?
Yeah, and there's a master ticket in Jira for Hive, like upgrade to JDK 11, and that's got a lot of subtasks and related tickets. I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, the Jira right in front of me, but there is one outstanding. And you can see kind of all my notes of, oh, I think I got it this time. Nope, something else broke. Oh, I got it. Nope, it broke. So you can kind of follow along in there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think. Yeah, and you think we would. So for Hive 4, you would think we should support JDK 11, right?
Yeah, that's always been my. I just think it'll take me a year. I kind of always had. I even created optimistically on the GitHub repository. There's a README file that lays out all the versions that for Hadoop and Java and Hive, kind of little matrix there. And I always thought that'd be kind of, I put Hive 4, Java 8 there, kind of just thinking that would be a temporary placeholder, but that's where it's been stuck.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we should probably update the site as well, but yeah, that's another story.
And I can't speak to it, but I think there has been some work on getting, I want to say, I don't want to say anything that's not true, but I think there's been some work on getting TES to run on JDK 11. So you can run the execution engine, even if you can't run the Hive server itself. I think there has been some work on that front.
Yeah,
and anyone here who worked with TES might be able to speak to that. Yeah, and there was, if I may go back, I apologize. Between the screens here, I've been hearing a little bit of it. There was a conversation about MapReduce and Hive and MapReduce. So there's been a lot of work done over the past few years from moving from MapReduce and on to Spark or Tez. And so certainly the Tez code is older and somewhat more battle tested than the Hive code. And a lot of people have already gone through, there's a lot of people using Tez. So a lot of people have already gone through that process of upgrading from MapReduce to Tez anyway. I can't speak to the adoption of Hive on Spark. I'm not quite sure, but that path started a long time ago. So there's been a lot of experience out there of migrating between the two. So I want to throw that out there.
The other area I'm kind of curious about is Kubernetes. Is that something that's going to come into our open source Hive, or is it going to be just vendors doing it?
I was going to ask exactly the same question. Any plan, any appetite to have Hive or at least LLAP running on Kubernetes?
Yeah, it will be definitely interesting to write on plain Kubernetes. I don't know any initiatives inside Hive right now, so but it will be definitely interesting. So it's it could be useful.
What about the Spark runtime? I know there was another mail discussion about supporting this long term, but I'm pretty sure some of the features are not supported there, right? And then, yeah, I'm not sure if the community agrees as a whole, but is there any plan to take some action there?
You mean upgrade the Spark runtime to a different version, or
I believe there was a suggestion to remove supporting Spark completely and have just the legacy MapReduce and Tez being the supporting all runtime, right?
Yeah. I don't know if there are still users of the Spark runtime right now or not.
I also would like to actually, I believe I asked you yesterday in Slack, and then I posted also in Git the question, and it is about LLAP, like what is going on with LLAP, and what is the, like, I remember a few years ago there was kind of a roadmap for LLAP and was more or less clear what was supposed to it to be like happening with the project. In the last year or so, I believe there's no kind of at least there's no, in the documentation, there's no like a roadmap or an update on that roadmap for LLDP. And sometimes we do like what it is supposed to, like what it is doing for in the ecosystem, like getting something that is faster than Tez, and that is 100% Hive QL and not like another query language that sometimes is not 100% compatible. But at the same time, what we have faced lately is some tuning and trying to get the proper setup for getting like a stable and with the proper performance. But this is starting like we don't like we were like trying to see what's going on with the project, and we didn't see like a much action on that, and we were kind of wondering, should we still invest time on LLAP or just move into something like Trino and just keeping TES and the Metastore as a separate like scopes of execution. And I don't know if if there is something for the LLAP as well in that part.
What I know about LLAP is that there are some guys working on improving the cache layer of LLAP. So with S3 and those execution layers or those layers when you are trying to access the data, and these are not that fast, then we can have a much better way to have the cache perform. I know some of them. Maybe Adam Sita, you might want to talk to him. He might know more about that.
But I think LLAP is live. So as Peter has said, so LLAP is still a live part of Hive. It's being extended, and if we will have a new release, then it will be part of it. So I think we should get a new release rolling somehow. So I think that would be.
There are also features that are targeting specifically LLAP as well, right? So I can talk for row-level filtering that we recently introduced as probe decode that is targeting LLAP daemons precisely, right? So when you do the map join, you take into account the projected hash table to filter more data, and you can only do that as part of long-running executors, right? So it's definitely a live part. There are some things that are lacking documentation, let's say, or a roadmap. We should definitely work on that, but it's definitely a component that is major for Hive, right?
I would be very much interested in by you guys think that there is a problem. What is the problem with LLAP? What are the main problems with accepting LLAP as a main execution engine? So
yeah, like in our case, we have seen sometimes the daemon is dead. Sometimes the container starts like at itself again, and we have again quorum. Sometimes it just doesn't get back. So kind of we're trying to see what is the consistent like what makes it like being able to get back alone or not. Also, documentation is something that is really hard to get, like a consistent documentation for this component. So sometimes we have kind of a set of bookmarks from former HTTP docs plus some former community post plus HD inside or plus something in Microsoft, and we try to get like all the bits from each single place and trying to understand what makes sense as a config, and then trying to apply to our deployment, saying, okay, this is working, this is not working. So yeah, like documentation, I will say it's for sure one of the main issues, especially when someone is not really familiar with the component. And I'm looking if one of my colleagues is also here. Probably could provide a little bit more of details. But yeah, it's basically like the daemon is not sometimes LLDP is flagged as up and running, but in reality it's not answering anymore to anyone. So we need just to restart or look at what is going on in Yarn with the service. So trying to tune it to have the proper balance between the resources that it needs plus the cache and run it stable for like a long period of time, it's sometimes challenging.
Okay, so basically, if I understand correctly, there are two main things you have mentioned. One of them was to have a better documentation. And another thing which you mentioned is basically the stability of the LAP daemons, how it starts, how it stops, and how it keeps running, and status of the LAP daemon. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. That.
Okay.
I might also add that probably this Hive 4 missing release could also play a big role in that, because there are lots of fixes up there for LAP, for the stability of LAP, which is of course not on the public releases. So most probably end users can't enjoy those fixes. And I agree that most probably having a framework or LLAP to decouple it from Yarn would be a big step forward, because most of the instability comes from the current solution, the service management of LLAP being bonded to Yarn. And the good thing in LLAP that you have the resources available to kick off your query. But this is actually one of the reasons why it's not suitable for all the use cases. Like when I know that resizing some of the resources for TESAM or the executors, the tasks themselves, would get me a much faster execution. I can't do that on LLAP. So this kind of dynamic per executor sizing would be a nice feature to get more resources there.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the fact that it's attached to Yarn, it makes it like a little bit like what is supposed to make it stable. It sometimes make it actually not that much stable to be so much attached to Yarn. But like one of the things like our users love from that is that they could basically run the same query in LAP or in test, and it will just work. It's not like when you have, like, let's say Impala, that you were saying, okay, this is not 100% compatible with Hive, so this specific query cannot. You need to convert it to make it work. Like with LAP, that just works, and that is what users likes about it. But again, when you have like a highly concurrent users all at the same time trying to do something, then resources is just hard to manage as well. Like who is doing what, and how many resources are going to be really reserved and warranted to each user that wants to use the service. And that is where it starts to get like complicated to manage.
So the workload management is not that sophisticated then for Yarn and such.
Yeah, I will say there is still like a work that could be done on in the workload management. It's still LAP compared with Hive. It's I will say still pretty new. So it's still young as technology, I will say.
Which version of Hive are you using? The 3.1.2?
It's 3.1.1, I believe.
Mm. Okay.
But we have done some custom fixes and adapting something for our specific needs.
I see.
Yeah, I can confirm that running near to Hive 4 version of LLAP outside of Yarn has much better stability. And what you already mentioned, that Adam is working on the IO layer. So that is really missing there. Like when you have a kind of a few thousand of executor slots across your LLAP cluster, and then someone just kicks off not really LLAP related query there, putting in a huge amount of data to the cache, and the most hot part of the data gets evicted. That's a big problem for us, for example. We can't get positive list or like blacklist, whitelist for all the cache partitions, like I don't know, data files, table, whatever, to ensure that those won't be evicted even if any other data would be read into the cache to be processed by the executors. So that's a big missing feature here, I think. And what I also can mention here is the integration with the third-party tools. So looks like the BI tools tend to ignore Hive as an execution engine. They just use it as a transport interface to get the data. They process full tables in memory, and they provide the execution within the engine itself. So getting less and less pushdowns from those BI engines also questions if Hive or LLAP itself could fit into this picture as an execution engine for BI tools.
See. Adam, I think what you mentioned about flagging tables to prevent getting them into the cache is something which is definitely there is on the backlog. I'm not sure about the position and such, but I think in one conversation I think Adam already mentioned that.
Okay, I think if we don't have any more comments, etc., I think we have just passed the 2-hour mark a bit. So I think it would be interesting to know that should we make this event more frequent, like say every month, every 3 months, every 2 months, or what do you think, guys?
Yeah, definitely more frequent.
Yeah, I agree. You could try once a quarter and see how that goes, I guess, unless people want it more frequently.
Okay, cool.
Well, I think if we are getting closer to the Hive 4 release, or even for the pre-releases, it would be really nice to learn all the new features compared to Hive 3, what Hive 4 could offer, and then for those few sessions, we could have a more frequent than quarters.
That's a good idea.
Yep, I agree. Like having a session about what's new and maybe some slide of documentation about what's new in Hive 4 can be also really useful for the user.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And what would be really great that one of you mentioned that there are known customers who migrated over from MapReduce to Taz. Just some kind of experience around that, lesson learned, and so on, issues they had to face with, just learn from it. That will be great.
Cool. Yeah. Maybe give you a presentation about it. That would be awesome. So I would be very much interested in that. Okay. Okay. Then I think we should try this again in a few months then. Or when Hive 4 comes out, but I guess that won't be in just a few months. So I would like to thank you everyone for attending this meetup, and thank you for coming. Yes.
Thanks
you.
very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
organizing it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Bye.